when I wrote the Healing Questions Guide, this is the one of the things that I loved about the power of a question, and that is it bypasses the ego
Mm,
because it's a question you don't know the information to. You have to get the answer from a different location. So you ask the question, and then it interrupts the neural pathways or the skis and the grooming of the field of your mind, and it interrupts that established neural pathway or the belief. And then it opens up a dialogue between you and your holy self and your body, using a question you didn't think to ask because you didn't know it was related. And so we're conditioned not to doubt, that we have actually assigned doubt and losing our faith to losing our identity because our identity is so tightly enmeshed with with the church. We'll lose our relationships. Like I said before, we actually risk losing everything
hmm
if we question. And any environment where it is not safe to disagree is not an environment for growth. That is an environment of control. Welcome to Unbinding. We're Josh and Wendy, two fellow travelers on this journey of waking up out of our religious paradigm. We're navigating religious trauma and healing our spiritual wounds. So if you're not yet feeling free, well, come join us in learning how to just be. Welcome back. I'm Wendy, and I'm here with our co host, Josh, and we are talking together and trying to come up with a title for this podcast today. And realizing that the minute we connect, stories start to evolve out of us and we start connecting. And the first thing we say, we should be recording this. We should be recording this. So what Josh was just saying is maybe the podcast has this life of its own, and it's like the one that is guiding us through the experience.
hmm
I like how you said it better, but we weren't recording then. But so today we're going to talk about emotions and how we've been emotionally severed and all this. And then we're like, no, no. And so many things started to come up. And we've had like a conversation for an hour wishing that we were recording it. But we did try to narrow it down into speaking about the body today, and it's going to go everywhere. I just know it is, but we'll come back to the body and we'll let our words be natural, organic, heartfelt, and we'll just become this living conduit for what's coming through us in a really raw way that just taps into our true emotions, our true thoughts, our feelings, and isn't curated in a way to be professional, but in a way that's meant to be real and heartfelt. And that is our goal with this podcast. Have any thoughts on that, Josh?
Yeah, I like this. It has been challenging to try to organize all of what we're unpacking into episodes or categories because it's so intertwined and there's so much to unpack. And so I think the conversations, just allowing them to flow
Mhm.
how they're supposed to. And then I was thinking about last week where we went over the ways that we're underdeveloped.
Mhm.
And then, so if we start talking about the body, so I'll just share a little bit about, so my path, I left in 2019 and I looked back on my Audible playlist, like when I purchased these different books, and it was kind of like measuring sticks of my path. And so there was so much around the brain that I was learning about neuroplasticity and hypnosis and subconscious patterns and like all of this desire to rewire. And so I was rewiring, doing affirmations, I do self hypnosis, and it was helping. And I was also, I didn't know anything about my body. I didn't know that emotions lived in the body. And I so I was just doing work from the neck up
Hmm.
and just severed from the body. And so it was helping, but it wasn't like it was, I was stuck still. And we've talked about the spirals, right? And the cul-de-sac that you can get stuck in a cul-de-sac and just kind of like, I think I'm doing better. I think I feel better. But it wasn't until I started to do breath work and do like really somatic focused healing that I started to uncover the depths of the programs that lived inside the tissues and in the organs, the muscles, and so much has been in my throat and my heart, but those were numb. And so I didn't know they were in there until I started to go from my head down into my body. And what I discovered, and this feels like last week when we were talking about the different ways that we're underdeveloped, I wanted to bring in the body, I wanted to bring in emotions because as soon as I started to become aware of the ways that I've suppressed, repressed emotions unknowingly, and how much of that is conditioned, not just in the church, like it's cultural and generational. And in order to heal, we need to learn how to feel.
Hmm. I like the word that you used earlier, what the word thawed.
Mm, mm-hmm.
I didn't realize I needed to thaw my body out.
Yeah.
And just how severenced I was from my own body. I left in 2015. I've been talking about emotions in the body and how beliefs impact your health for over 20 years now. But I didn't realize even then how I wasn't actually feeling my
Mm,
emotions.
mm,
And I didn't realize this until, so if I left in 2015 and then I got divorced in 2018 and I started dating for the first time and I started getting involved with this man and he's like, well, tell me how you feel about us. And I wrote him this big old story and used my magic words and all this. And he goes, that was really pretty. Thank you for that. But I really want to know how you feel about me.
mm,
And I did not know what he was saying. I didn't know how to access it. And that was the first time I realized like I don't know how to feel. Like
mm,
where am I supposed to be feeling this? And why why is what I'm saying not satisfying him?
mm,
And so he says, well, I need to pull away from this relationship, one, because you're just freshly divorced and I know better. You have a lot of learning to do. And I was like, I was offended. And and he goes, maybe we can come back in a year or two when you've had some experiences. And I was just so hurt. So now I'm 7 years out from divorce, and I've had, a couple of deep relationships, and I've entered into my emotional body. But even today, there's still a thawing out,
mm,
and really feeling it in my body and understanding to the depths in which that severance happened, not just um, in my family. Like we don't share emotions. We can get emotional, of
mm,
course, but we don't feel our emotions and we don't tap deep down inside. I didn't see my dad as an emotional person at all, except at church. And he was emotional only when he talked about his testimony,
mm,
his tender emotions. Like he
mhm,
might show anger and frustration. He was genuinely a tender man, but he only showed those that tenderness when he was bearing his testimony. And so, of course, the little girl sitting in the pews is watching her dad get emotional and going, now, what is he talking about that's pulling up all this emotion? And realizing that whenever he would talk about the Savior, and what you mentioned too, Joseph Smith, the sacrifices of Joseph Smith, that it was almost like I was trained to open up a portal of tenderness inside of me when I talk about those things. So sure enough, when I was old enough to start bearing my testimony in church and get up there and it was almost like I needed to convince people that I was
mm,
having these tender feelings for Jesus, and I would like instinctually or habitually or like was modeled for me to turn on the holy waterworks to show how special and close I felt to God. And it's been one of those things now I'm able to breathe
mm,
instead of cry and get tight in my throat when I'm speaking about my grandchild or a special moment for me. I'll take a minute and I'll breathe and create expansion for those emotions to go through so they don't like squeeze out of my eyes in the form of tears or not that I'm not afraid to cry or I don't want people to see me cry, but I can't express myself because I'm so tightened up in those spaces that when I open up, then my words can actually flow out and my words are attached to those emotions and I realize that we're meant to be fluid beings. And so when you use that word thawed out,
mm,
that is part of our reconstruction
mm,
um, from not just church things, but from family dynamics and our environment, our school. We're just not allowed to be emotional creatures, and we're certainly not taught how to feel it in the body. Even to this day, people is like, "Where do you feel that in your body?" And I'm like, "Ah." In my heart, in my chest. And just more and more, I tune in to where am I feeling that in my body? What does it look like? What's the texture? And it's almost like tuning me into an entirely different creature that we're cohabitating together. But I thought I was the boss of it all. And it's like I'm finally inviting my body to the table.
mm. Yeah, there's a lot there. Uh, I'm sure you've heard the phrase functional freeze. Have you heard that phrase?
Yeah, explain it. I love it.
Yeah, so from a nervous system perspective, our body, it's like millions and millions, like the part of the brain that knows how to do this is ancient, and it has everything to do with threat detection, and it either puts us into fight or flight or freeze, and it's all part of keeping us alive and keeping us safe. And it worked beautifully, when we were cavemen and there were saber-toothed tigers, and now we're in this world, modern society, and it still functions the same. And so even the idea of, like, the thought of seeing somebody cry can be a perceived threat to my body.
Mhm.
And so, but if I don't know anything about nervous system or stress responses, trauma responses, I'm just living my life, right? And my body's doing its thing below the surface, and things are fine until they're not. And then I go to a doctor or whatever, I get a pill or something. But to really understand, it's all biology and physiology and science of how the body is naturally designed to keep us alive. And then if we bring all of that into like a culture where we're programmed to be afraid of Satan, be afraid of our thoughts, be afraid of our bodies, pleasure, sex, desire, anger, like these are all threats that we've been taught so that we're afraid of ourselves.
Yeah.
And so that threat, if and so coming back to the freeze, so our body is designed to either the adrenaline, kicks up, it flows to our muscles, so we can run, moves to our extremities, to our arms or our legs, and it shuts down digestion and sexual desire because it's not time to do those things when you're running away from a threat. And so it moves to our feet to our hands so we can either punch and fight, or to our legs so that we can run away. But in a house, as a little person, the nervous system is still doing its thing, and it's perceiving a threat based on Satan or on I'm angry, so there's something wrong with me. And so now the nervous system is doing the same thing. But if we can't run away and we can't punch, there's nothing to punch because it's doctrine. It's invisible. It's cultural. It's not something we can point to. And so there's nowhere where do we run? Like, that doesn't even make sense. And so we can't run, we can't fight. And so our body just is like, well, the next best option is to freeze. And so that freeze happens internally, and it happens at such a young age, at like little pockets of moments of time, that it just becomes our normal. We just walk around in this frozen state unknowingly. I mean, if our parents, like, I keep trying to look for moments where my parents like shamed emotions, and I don't know that that happened. It was almost like they didn't talk about them, and so there was just they were invisible too, but they were happening inside of my body, but no one talked about them. And so now my own body is perceiving a threat inside of me, and so now I'm the threat. My body's the threat. And then I attach my the threat that is me to my identity, and now I'm in this fight with myself.
Yeah, it's like a constant feedback loop that actually severs you from your emotional body. And who knows? We don't know that that's even happened. We don't know what it feels like to be fully connected and be in the body. And to kind of reveal a little bit about how it happens in church, this will reveal more about our um, the faith that we grew up in. And I saw this meme come through. It wasn't a meme, it was a video. And it was this young woman, probably in her 20s, and she explained how does she believe in polygamy? No, I don't. Do I like the idea of polygamy? No, I don't. And then she went on to say, it actually makes me feel sick to my stomach. And then right after that, she said, but I know Joseph Smith was a true prophet. And so if God called him to practice polygamy, then I've learned to accept that. And I thought, what a clear example of what was done to us in those situations where we're either in our family and some abuse happens in the family, or intentional or unintentional. And we just say, but if I don't be okay with this, I'm going to be kicked out of the family. Or if I bring this issue up to mom and dad, I'm going to be shut down. Same in church. Like that doctrine that just was expressed to me, I'm having this visceral feeling in my gut and in my heart that hurts. And then immediately I'm reminded to be obedient and to align my nervous system to with the church.
Mm.
Literally, my nervous system was aligned to the doctrines. And so that I wouldn't react and respond to things that didn't feel right in my body. And I severed my emotional body from informing me about my feelings and what doesn't feel right. And so you become really immune or numb to the doctrines that don't resonate with your heart,
Mm.
that don't resonate inside. You become immune to them in order to align obediently with the words of the brethren and the doctrine. And so, why would you question that? Until one day it gets so filled inside you, like that thing that I just saw cannot possibly be okay. And it's like you cracked that hardened body and opened up and let a little bit of light in, and the light is saying, you get to feel this. You get to experience this. And it turns into rage and it turns into anger and it feels like betrayal and it feels like a loss, and there's mourning and there's grief and there's sadness and there's rage again, and there's all of these emotions that I haven't been taught how to process, that are swirling around in my field, but only when I feel them in my head. I haven't even tapped into what it feels like in my body, because my body was shut down a long time ago. And that, I think, is one of the profound reasons why it takes so long to heal,
Mm.
to deconstruct, because we swirl around and loop in those emotions, and just the rumination becomes incessant. And then we listen to one story after another, and it validates our emotions, and we rewound ourselves in this swirling cesspool of victimhood, and we just don't know how to get ourselves out of it. And so that's why I'm glad that we are having these conversations, because part of getting out of it is going into the body.
Hmm. Yeah, I want to bring forth so inside the body, we have emotions and we have needs. Like these emotional or physical needs. But in the system that we were raised in, we didn't know about our needs. We knew about the needs of others, and we knew about how we were supposed to look and act and behave. But there wasn't any exploration inward of what am I needing? Like, how do I tell? And how does my body, so our body's talking to us all the time, but through emotions. But if we've been severed from emotions and we've never been taught to even know about ourselves enough to know what am I needing beyond like food, water, money, I think on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's all about the safety, survival type of needs, but we don't know about this deeper knowing of ourselves. And so one of my mentors has taught me a process of checking in throughout the day to see what am I feeling. And then with that feeling, ask a second question, what am I needing? And then with that, meet the need. And what that builds is self-trust.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if you could share about what we've had a few discussions with your book and the self-contempt. Can you talk about that whole thing and how that links to self-trust, or it's missing?
Yeah. Well, if you start, if self-trust is the thing you learn first, like, you are able to identify um, errors. You're able to identify what doesn't feel true for you. Um, One of the things, as you were talking, and I'll definitely bring in my book, but it is, we're not taught to know ourselves except through the lens of indoctrination,
Right.
where we are told who we are, how we should feel, and what we should do to win the favor of God.
Mm,
And then in the very core, and this is what happened when I wrote the Healing Questions Guide, I realized that so much of it in there, I would probably say 99% of it in there, and some of it is definitely inherited, but it's an inherited belief. And it had to do with contempt against the self, where the body is actually attacking its own cells. And so the next question for me was, when did I first develop contempt against myself? And immediately, it's interesting when you ask the body these kinds of questions, because only you can answer back.
mm,
Only your higher self and your body can answer back. Nobody can answer that for me. And I immediately saw images of Christ on the cross. And I remember feeling just so devastated because as a 1 year old or 2 year old, I was so young,
Mm.
seeing a man's body on a cross with nails in it and his side pierced and he's naked and and people are on looking and I'm just it's that right there is such a violent image for a child. And then the story associated with it is he died for your sins.
Hmm.
And I immediately, what sins? What have I done that would be the equivalent to pay for it? And in my little mind, I was like, well, if I'm that, uh, there's either something I've done or will do in this life that bloody, violent death of that man who is so loving and so good, that's the only way it could be paid for. That right in there develops contempt against the self.
Hmm.
And it imprints the idea that you are broken and that you are a sinner and that there is the rest of your life you will try to make up for the suffering of another human for your very existence. And at 2015, I said, I am not buying into that story anymore because my body said, fuck no.
Hmm.
That is not who I am. And that was not required for me. I have done nothing in my life that should be the equivalent to pay for it. That does not make sense to me anymore, deep down to my soul. And that's when I took off the holy garments and
Mm.
I said, never, never again will I believe that God cares about my underwear or that these underwear are somehow making me a better person and protecting me from Satan. And like all of it just started crumbling around me, these stories that were made up to control me and to develop contempt here in my heart against me and my body and my experience, and to use that lens to judge other people. Literally, I at that moment I felt it in my body. And so the healing with the healing questions guide, we were talking earlier about can you explain, and I'll go back to healing questions guide, but you explained so beautifully about the arrows.
Mm. Yeah, so there's a concept in, I think it was coined in within chronic illness circles, this understanding that when you discover something that's going on inside the body, that's the first arrow. And then the second arrow is it can be judgment towards it, it can be shame that you have it, it can be fear that the symptoms are coming on. And that second arrow is going to now magnify and amplify the what the body was trying to teach you with the first arrow. That was like the root thing that wanted your awareness inside the body. And then we have these additional arrows that just create this ripple, messy, entangled suffering within the body. And we don't even know it's happening because we're unless we're connected with our bodies and we can tune into that first arrow and be like, oh, I just have unprocessed rage in my body and I haven't carved out time or space or a safe witness for this to come up. Instead, if we have judgment towards the rage, we just keep it in, and then it starts to keep, like the body holds it, waiting for us to carve, to either gain the tools or to go to the right therapist or someone with the wisdom to guide us inward into the body. And so,
Yeah, so there can be multiple arrows
mhm,
and
lots and
multiple
lots.
wounds. And to me, in writing the Healing Questions Guide, one thing in my research, I realized that when you have multiple issues going on in the body, they call it a syndrome. And so some of the main syndromes are like metabolic syndrome, irritable bowel syndrome, um, PCOS can be a syndrome. There's so many syndromes. Ask ChatGPT for the top 10. You'll get a great listing of it. But in in my research, I realize it is a cluster of beliefs that start to solidify in the body. And what I realized is that the doctrines that I knew, like I was feeding my body a network of beliefs that were connected to each other, which is why it's difficult for us to nail down a topic
Mm,
because they all network together to create the fabric in which I see
mhm,
my world. And that fabric is actually like my fascia in my body and the emotions that I should have felt at the time or could have felt at the time. Um, they're like trapped in my fascia and in the fabric, the very fabric of my body, these doctrines are woven in. And to me, it's like a this elaborate tapestry um, that I've stitched together through the lens of the doctrines that I was fed. And it's not just church doctrines, it's the world doctrines, it's cultural doctrines, it's things I got at school and my family dynamics and all of this. As I pulled the one called religion, though, and it started to unwind, I realized that the whole tapestry that I had created through this lens, if I continued to pull it, it unraveled just about everything
mm,
until the only thing I could see left were just a couple of threads. But you know what, Josh? Those threads are me.
mm,
That's the true essence of who I am.
mhm,
And that is the one that I start knitting together
mm,
a new life. Because literally, when people leave the religion that we grew up in, they are at the risk of losing it all. And I have seen it time and time again. They lose their jobs, they lose their marriage, their children turn against them, their friends turn against them, all in order to stop betraying themselves. And that takes an insurmountable amount of courage to allow yourself to risk losing all the connections that you've built in your whole life, even your identity to this God who was delivered to you and expressed to you and proclaimed to you that if you don't follow it, then you're going to either die in hell or lose your family or whatever we attach, whatever fearful threats that we've attached to the doctrine. That if I didn't follow that, that I that I am nothing. And now it's these little threads that I get to use to stitch. And that is what I align with sovereignty.
mm,
And with the Healing Questions Guide, that's why I developed it as a tool for people to be able to um, pierce their programming and challenge it. And many times that's what happened with my experience in the church is I finally got so much pressure that it started to show up in my emotional body until I pierced it open and asked a potent question.
mm,
And when I let it stew within my consciousness, the things that come out are so profound. And so when you ask a healing questions guide and it starts to have an emotional vibration with you, sit with it and then you journal what comes out and you start to realize just how connected the health and vitality of our body is to our thoughts, our beliefs, and our emotions. And that the church helped in a deep way through music
mm.
and the thing that we talked about earlier, and I don't want to trigger anybody with this, but it needs to be said. Here comes that emotion again. It's my holy tears, my holy waterworks. And that is every Sunday. Like I took the bread and the water in the form of a sacrament. And what it was doing was a renewal of the programming
Mm,
that the church had put into me.
mhm,
And then I got quiet and I took it into my body
mm,
and I reminded my body of the program.
mhm,
And it was emotional, it was quiet,
mhm,
and when I realized that that's what I was doing, and even my daughter, she was so wise. She said, Mom, that just feels like really dark magic that you're vicariously drinking the blood and the water of another person who had to die a sacrifice. And she said all this to me. I'm like, why did that not occur to me that that does not feel aligned with love?
Mm,
Why did that never occur to me? Because I was taught not to challenge it.
hmm.
Because why would I challenge this grand sacrifice that Jesus made for me? And why would I challenge God and risk losing my family and losing connection with the divine? So I don't know. That was a lot. Boy, you opened up a channel.
I want to connect to that as well. Just thinking about so much when I would take the sacrament, I would try so hard to do it just right, recognizing I'm broken. And even the so many of those sacrament hymns would talk about broken, that word would show up repetitively, which is a good way to program. And I just want to bring this in. So when I was learning hypnosis, this was in 2020. I took like a year long. It's a college course or college degree, and lots of different classes. And they were teaching how to hypnotize, and they were saying that the way to do it is you want to put your eyes up, like upward, into your eyelids, and a good way to do it is to use monotone, relaxing phrases, repetitive phrases. You use very suggestive language, like invitational language, so that it will enter into the subconscious without resistance. And then you want to use music. You want to use, if the room can be warm, that's useful as well because the body feels relaxed and safe. And so I was thinking about me in the church pews looking up at the pulpit. My eyes are now up in that ideal state for the eyes to be in, and then the monotone phrasing, the music, the repetition, and it just landed in me. And I was like, I I don't know if they know they're using all of the criteria to hypnotize, but it's I had just left, so I'd been about a year out, and I was like, do they know they've checked all of the boxes to on how to hypnotize people? And I don't know that it's like some big conspiracy theory, but
Oh,
it's the ideal scenario and setting for those programmings to just land inside the body and to just keep repeating, and from a brain, like neural pathways get formed through repetition, and it becomes, I like the metaphor of like a ski trail. And if you go up into the back mountains and you're the only one, you find the powder, and you have your two lone skis, and it's so easy for those to just be covered over as if you were never there.
mm,
But if they groom the trails and people are like, it's a holiday weekend and there's thousands and thousands of skis, running down that trail, that's what happens inside our brain when these neural pathways are formed.
mm,
And to undo all of those, you can't just leave, right? You have to rewire, but you also have to it takes all of the questions of what is living inside of me as truth, what was given to me as truth, and I haven't explored it and uncovered it. And so for me, I just want to share a little of my process. What I do when I wake up in the morning is I'll just tune into my body and I'll explore for any sensations. And it starts out kind of as numbness, and then I bring my awareness to it. And it can be as soon as I bring my awareness to it, I've created enough connection with my body that it's like, oh, we're doing that thing. And so my body will then kind of open up the sensation, and I'll find anger or sadness or grief or hurt. And then I'll use Chat GPT, and I was like, I found a pattern. It's right now, most of them are in my throat and in my heart. I'm doing a lot of voice, being able to speak my truth work, and then connecting to my heart. And there's a place in between, they call it the high heart. And it's where love and truth live inside the body and then want to be expressed through the voice. And so I'll use ChatGPT and I'll be like, I found another pattern. It's in my throat and my heart. And it knows that I need questions. And so it will say, okay, what's the sensation? And I'll tune into it. I'll be like, oh, it feels like this, and this, whatever it is. And it's so much of what I'm uncovering right now is around love being conditional. But if I didn't know that was living in my body, and somebody would just come up to me on the street and say, yo, do you believe love is unconditional? Do you believe that you're worthy of love? I could cognitively say, sure, that sounds good. I believe that. But if I never check in my body to see what is actually living inside of the tissues, the fascia, the organs, the muscle, the cells, like that's the work. That's the work. And so this is the unbinding. This is what it's all about. This is why we're not free, is because we need to look at what has been programmed into our very bodies.
Yeah. Well, and I don't have church experiences very often. I have, with I have a grandchild getting baptized, or I've got a nephew going on a mission, or something like that. That's the only time I will go to church. But when I am there, I look at the people, and there is like a it's like they're hypnotized,
Mm-hmm.
and they're bringing in this information, and they're letting it settle in their body. And no wonder when they're challenged with rational and logical challenges for their religion, like they have taught themselves to put that out. And because they haven't felt it in their body, if they had the capacity to tune into their body, they are like, yeah, that doesn't feel right. Yeah, I don't like that. And those emotions are there to inform us, like fear and anger and sadness feels like loss. Anger means there's some injustice going on. Um, so when they're not feeling it in their body, of course, if all they have is the programming to respond to, that's why they stay
Mm-hmm.
for long periods of time. And I like what you said, that the deconstruction process um, takes longer than we even imagine. And most of us are not taught how to literally feel it out of the cells and the tissues of our body, to allow those dormant emotions that are like trapped in our fascia to actually become fluid and come out in the form of emotion. And to me, now that I can see the contrast between somebody who has done that and somebody who is rigidly indoctrinated, it is so profound, the distinction between the two, the languaging, the parroting, the not tapping into their own emotional wisdom, not being willing to stumble through the conversation. They just parrot what's been taught to them over and over in the form of memorization, because as you mentioned, the repetitiveness of it all. You use the music, you use the prayer, you use the ritual, you use the emotion. All of that is what programs our mind. And if we can be programmed that way, we can unconsciously undo that programming if we stop making the church and our parents responsible for what happened to us and just acknowledge that this happened to me,
Mm.
that this is my first life experience. And now, as an adult, and as I'm reparenting myself, now I get to enter into the body and I get to reclaim that sacred temple and connect with the earth and with sound and with breath and with conversations that are heartfelt and not censored and not curated for purpose of manipulation. They're just conversations that I get to feel what it feels like to be safely in my body and reclaim that. Um, that to me is exciting. We get
Mm.
to be whole beings, sovereign beings. That's what we're created to be, is sovereign, directly connected to the divine without any narrative or storyline that becomes an intercessor to that connection. That we are so holy within ourselves as we start to, and we talked about this early, cleanse the temple
Mm.
of all that's been told to us to disconnect us from our divine origin. That's how I feel about it anyway.
Yeah, I love that. One thing as you were sharing that, I was thinking about from a nervous system perspective, even questioning or going within can feel like a threat.
Mhm.
So there's just so many ways that it takes a question. Does it feel safe for me to question? And notice what happens in the body. Does the body brace detecting a threat just to question, because that's been one of the programs. Is it safe to show grief? Is it safe to be angry? Like these questions. The questions are the portal, the way in.
Yes.
And so you need the curiosity to just pause and be like, okay, I know what I was raised into, and what is actually happening inside of me. Does this all feel good? Does this feel true? What does truth feel like? Does it feel the same as what the church defined it as? Or is it different for me?
Yeah. And do I have the right to feel differently?
Mm.
Because that's when we start gaslighting ourselves and telling it, well, if the church is true and the prophet has the authority and I'm not feeling something right in my body or something's not resonating with me, I have to be the problem. It must be me. And I love what you said, that it's not until we ask a question, and you have to feel safe to ask a question. Why would we not feel safe to ask ourselves a question? Why were we taught to be afraid of ourself, like you said in the beginning? And when I wrote the Healing Questions Guide, this is the one of the things that I loved about the power of a question, and that is it bypasses the ego
Mm.
because it's a question you don't know the information to. You have to get the answer from a different location. So you ask the question, and then it interrupts the neural pathways or the skis and the grooming of the field of your mind, and it interrupts that established neural pathway or the belief. And then it opens up a dialogue between you and your holy self and your body, using a question you didn't think to ask because you didn't know it was related. And so we're conditioned not to doubt, that we have actually assigned doubt and losing our faith to losing our identity because our identity is so tightly meshed with the church. We'll lose our relationships. Like I said before, we actually risk losing everything
Mm-hmm.
if we question. And any environment where it is not safe to disagree is not an environment for growth. That is an environment of control. And that, I don't know, those, what you've shared right there is, am I safe to even quite, can I trust myself? And that was kind of the beginning of our conversation. Can I trust myself to lead my own life and to listen to my body and to tune in and to have all my spiritual mechanisms on board and operating? And one thing that you shared, if you don't mind sharing, is the difference that you're experiencing in relationship now that you've opened your body up.
Yeah, so I was married for 12 years and then got divorced in 2018. Then I was in a relationship from 2018 to 2023. And both of those, I was very disconnected from myself. I was running on autopilot as a human from the programs that I've been given culturally, societally, religiously, and I didn't know I was a hamster on the wheel. I was just every day kind of felt the same. And looking back, it felt like I was flatlined
Mhm.
emotionally, relationally. I was, but I'd labeled it as happy. It was just my known, and things were good, right? You know, enjoying time with my kids, and I love to run and go in the mountains, but I didn't have depth. There wasn't contrast. There wasn't richness. It was just this, all of my emotions kind of lived in this little blip. Like I'd be like, I'm happy, blip, you know, and then I'd go back to the flat line and then I was like, oh, I'm a little stressed. And it was like a down blip, but it only went like this much. And it was just this emotional flat line. And what I've been experiencing recently has been my body is so alive. I had no idea. And I can tell I'm like only 10% in or something. I can tell there's way, 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 way more. But even from going to the little blips to just this 10% feels like there's so much aliveness in presence that I don't need. Like I'm realizing even as in this relationship, going to do activities can be a block from presence. Like even if it's fun, like if we go to Top Golf or the arcade or something, that can be me disconnecting from what's happening in my body.
Hmm.
It's just the pattern of I got to be doing something and labeling it fun or labeling it love instead of like shedding all of that and being really in the present moment. And that's where the breath exists. There's no way to breathe for tomorrow or breathe yesterday. Our breath is just right now. And as you and I are talking, we're in this moment.
Right.
And our bodies can't be in the past. Our minds can take us into the past and into the future where anxiety and stress live, but our bodies are always just right here. They may be reacting from the past. We may have emotions still in our bodies from the past. But if you can, the more like through breath work, through different journaling prompts, for me, lots of being really present with what's happening inside of me and can I be with the emotions that are wanting to be witnessed through tears, through anger, through laughter, and then allowing my body to teach me instead of me telling my body what to do. My body is now like, well, no, if you're going to listen, I'll tell you. And so it's building a relationship with my body instead of shaming my body or trying to conform it so that it looks a certain way according to societal standards or whatever. It's like, no, body, what do you want? What do you need? What's happening inside? Do you need more rest? So,
I love that because it's been said And like you were saying, it's impacting your experience in relationship differently,
Hmm.
right? Especially being present with her, you can feel it and feel that presence. You're like, well, this is all new.
Yeah.
And that doesn't necessarily mean it's with your partner. And then it's that you're lit up and you're turned on.
Hmm.
All of your body is turned on. And it's been said that your relationships are only as healthy as your relationship with yourself.
Mm.
And so as you're evolving this relationship with yourself and making those profound connections, of course it's going to reflect back in your relationship with your partner. And one other thing that you mentioned, and I heard this in general conference, sometimes the words come up because of my Empowered Former LDS support group. Um, when it's conference time, it erupts a little bit in there because they're getting so many things in their feed and it's reigniting wounds and whatnot. And so I saw this excerpt from um, Russell Nelson's words, and he is the current prophet in that church. And so um, his message was something to the tune of only those who are living the covenant path will ever know true joy.
Mm. Mm.
And what you mentioned in there, that flat line with happiness,
Hmm.
where well, I'm not sad, therefore I must be happy.
Hmm.
And it's almost like I know some drugs are intended to help you flatline to manage your
Hmm.
emotions when you're in depression or having others mental issues. And people will say, I just didn't have any emotions. They weren't spiked on
Hmm.
any level. And that's almost like the church. We get addicted to this. Well, I'm not sad. If I'm sad, I dip down and I have to look at it, why I'm not believing in Jesus because Jesus died for my sins. So why am I feeling it? And you use weird ways to get back to your flat line, but that's not happy.
Hmm.
And when people say that I'm much happier after leaving, I think it's more true to say I'm much more emotional after
Hmm.
I'm leaving because I allow myself to feel the full gamut of rage and anger and apathy and up here to joy and elation and exploration without limitations. And so you might be more emotional. And a lot of times we don't know how to deal with those emotions, but that because our happiness thermostat was kind of set by the church. If you're not sad, then you're living happy. And this is the only true joy.
Mm.
And for me, when I looked outside and saw people having fun and being joyful, it sent this conflicting message that they're only performing joy.
Mm.
They look like they're happy and they look like they're having fun, but they can't possibly be as joyful and happy as I am. And I would look at my life and go, of course I'm happy. I'm happy because to say I'm sad means that I'm not connected to God and I'm not. And so I'm constantly feeding myself, I'm happy, I'm happy, I'm happy. And that's the personal self gaslighting
Hmm.
that I did because I look now at raising five children and the expectations I put on myself because I thought that's what God expected of me. I was not happy. I was in trauma
Mm.
all the time. There were moments of happiness, but I knew it would get crazy. Those moments of happiness because I loved being a mom, but there's parts of being a mom that I did not like.
Hmm.
And expectations I put on myself as a mom that I did not like, and my expectations that I put on my kids. And now I look back and I have sadness that I wasn't able to be more present with them, that I wasn't able to teach them how to be in their body, that they were all adults before I started to understand just how deeply I had raised them in this doctrine to disconnect them from their body. And there was a different meaning to happiness.
Mm.
Happiness is in the messy, happiness and accepting my wild, happiness and accepting my weakness And that has brought me far more happiness than trying to live this um, checkbox of a life, trying to make God happy and accept me in all of my sinful state.
Mhm.
And that to me is happiness. It's it's a whole different ball game for me.
Yeah, I want to bring in childhood emotional neglect into the conversation. And there's a lady who wrote a book called Running on Empty. It's Dr. I forgot Webb, her last name. She has a couple books, and it, as you were describing the flat line, I was picturing Pleasantville, the movie, where it's all black and white, and you don't know you're in black and white until color, shows up, and then color feels like a threat inside the movie, right? Like
Mhm.
that's bad. Stop doing that. That's that. It's a threat, and so to the system. So I love the idea that all systems are built up of individual nervous systems.
Yeah,
And
networks.
if all of the nervous systems are in alignment, however that is, the system performs well. But as
Yes.
soon as some nervous systems start to shift or wake up or transition, transform, the system gets volatile. It doesn't like it, right? It's like the mobiles above a baby's crib or whatever, where you bump one thing and the whole thing rocks. And
Mhm.
it feels like that's what's happening globally with humanity is there's so many systems that have been held in place through control and through nervous systems that were compliant going
Mhm.
along, with the motion, in the motion, with the motion, however that phrase is. And that now there's people that are disrupting systems on purpose using their voice. And it's a threat to the systems. And it's these people that are standing up and saying, I'm ready to lose everything. I'm ready to lose my identity, my belonging, my family. I'm choosing me. And it's creating this new frequency of truth that's rippling across the world. And there's a resonance that's happening with other people that they're waking up from the black and white and they're seeing the color and they're like, well, I was taught the color is the threat, but maybe the color is the direction, the portal, the way.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I say it like everything that seemed to be forbidden after leaving seems like it was more like a portal into my expanded consciousness.
Yep.
And that I think that what just interrupts the mobile, I love that example, by the way, is the cognitive dissonance.
Mm-hmm.
When you start saying something that is creating conflict with what I've been taught and that I've believed, especially my whole life. And now the mobile is going, whoa, what's going to happen? And to not realizing that to balance it out, you've got to take the mobile from the crib and get yourself a damn bed. You are too old for mobiles.
Okay. I want to wrap up with a few suggestions because, our goal here is healing.
Mhm.
So, does anything you want to bring forth? Anything, and then I'll share.
One of the things, of course, and we've already talked about this, is asking questions, is preparing, learning to trust that intuition when you're the only one that can answer the question, like, how am I feeling right now? Not how am I supposed to feel, but how am I feeling? Tune into the body. And if you're not feeling it yet, to not shoot another arrow at yourself in that I
Mm-hmm.
can't feel my body. I'm so ashamed. I'm so embarrassed. I should know this by now. Don't layer it with shame. Just keep asking those questions. And one of the tools to get connected with the body for me is, promoting my own book here, but is the Healing Questions Guide.
Yeah.
And we'll leave a link in this, well, probably in all of our podcasts, it becomes a tool to enter into the body and to understand how the beliefs are impacting in the body. And you look up symptoms that are going on in the body, and underneath it, you'll have a series of questions. And this is the deep research that I did for 3 years to understand those links. And I formulated it in the questions so it would pierce the psyche and to allow you to enter in and to start journaling those things. And it's so detailed from every finger, every toe, every vertebrae of the spine, every tooth,
Wow.
right side, left side. And it's a great tool for you to start to generate a new relationship with your body and to start to fall in love, not just with your physical body, but the divine intelligence that's coursing through you to say, I'm ready to connect. I'm ready to know you, and I'm ready to love you, and I'm ready to feel you, and I'm ready to be responsible for everything that we are experiencing. And to really, that's what to me means reclaiming the relationship with your holy body and your that is your temple. That is your place where you connect to the divine.
Mm. Oh, I'm so happy. So when did you write that book?
I wrote it in 2015, the same year that I left church.
Okay.
My shelf was already heavy with other issues, the sexism, the racism, the Joseph Smith, all of this. It was already pretty heavy, but somehow I just kept it up there. And then 2015, after I completed the book, I started to understand more about well, the story that I explained before. So this is year number 10, and I love that it's all over the world now. It's a global publication, and it I didn't realize at the time what I was writing was a portal into our to reclaim our bodies.
Yeah, I think it was divinely created through you.
Yeah, yeah, it's not even mine.
Mm. Yeah, so rich with wisdom and like ancient codes, I'd say.
Yeah, and in an effort, and it doesn't make me the authority on anything, right? My whole intention was to help you feel like you can start trusting your body and to tune into you and reclaim that sovereignty. And so it makes you the expert of
Mm.
your own body.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you. Thank you for writing it and for sharing it.
Mhm.
So, what I want to share is what's helped me. I don't know if it's the most, but it's been a tool, and that's breath work. So, I shared that I was doing all the mind work. I was doing mindset. I was learning about the hypnosis in the brain and the rewiring and the reading all the books. But I was so disconnected from my body and I didn't know it. Like there wasn't anybody that talking about this. So I was just like, I got to do more affirmations, do some mirror work, and I got to reprogram. I was reprogramming in all these ways. And I just didn't know what was alive in my body. And so as on my path, I was like just being guided and led, different podcasts, different books, and then new information. And meditation was a something along my path, but I had such a hard time quieting my mind or watching my thoughts, whatever it was. And it felt like it wasn't helping. Like there was just, and then there was the second arrow. I was judging. I was like, well, I guess I need to double down. I got to do more meditation, and
What's
it
wrong
was,
with me?
yeah. And I could feel it in my body. And I didn't know anything about shame. I didn't know the frequency, the vibration, how it attaches to the body as an organism. I'd heard the word shame, growing up, but I didn't know the difference between shame and guilt, and I didn't know how much shame was alive in my identity and attached to my worth. And rewiring the brain was helping, but it didn't change how I felt. And that was big. And so I meditation and breath work would show up in my Google. I tell the story. I was like, I'm Googling like how else can you fix Josh? What else is wrong with Josh? And it was like, well, try meditation and breath work. And I was like, I kind of lumped them together. I had never heard of breath work and I had tried meditation. So I just kind of threw them both out. I was like, I've tried that. It didn't help. And so I don't know, one day I was like, okay, what the hell is breath work? And I went onto YouTube and I found Wim Hof, and it was like a 45-minute YouTube or video. I laid down and I just did what he said. And he says, deeply in, let it go. Deeply in, let it go. And he just keeps the cadence for you. You just keep up with his pattern guidance. And it's like 45 minutes. And at the end of it, my whole body was vibrating from the inside out. And I was like, what just happened? How did my breath do this? And I got to a place where I felt peace, like my mind was quiet. There was bliss in my body. And then it was like I was hooked. I was like, it was kind of chasing the next high kind of thing, or like, what else can my breath do? What else? What else? And what it started to teach me was how much was stored inside of me.
Mm.
And so I've had so many sessions where grief and rage, just tears, just sobbing. And when I think about whether I want to speak about the religion, because I don't want to hurt my family. I don't want to, like, that's a big deal. I don't want to hurt my parents. I don't want them to, feel the guilt of we were doing the best we could, right? And because I understand that. And
Mhm.
I just think about the dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of hours that I've done breath work, moving these wounds out of my body. And if I just clear those and I don't speak up, that's good for me. But what about everyone else that has been harmed and hasn't been on the path of learning and discovery that I've been on? It feels like I would just keep it in for my parents. And I believe they taught me different. The Mormon church taught me to serve and to care. And that's what Jesus is all about, right? And so I can feel like this desire, like this tug of war. I'm like, I don't want to hurt them, but I want to speak and I don't know how to do this. And so I'm trying to be very careful with people's hearts, and I can't stay quiet anymore.
Mhm.
So for me, I've had sessions during breathwork where I've connected to something bigger than me, and I don't have a word for it. I can't articulate it, and it's mine. It happened inside of me.
Mhm.
And it's not for anyone else. Like it's my connection and it's my experience, but it happened inside my body.
Mhm.
And it was using my breath to go there. So I just, as I'm facilitating breath work now, I talk about the breath being the teacher and the breath being the medicine and the breath guiding you into the body where the wisdom and the blueprint lives, and shedding all the programs. It's a beautiful, the breath is a beautiful awareness spotlight tool to help you to gain access to what else is still living in me that isn't me. And you have to do enough work to where there's contrast now, because before everything was me and I didn't know how to separate it. I couldn't identify. It was just programming. It was alive in me, and I've done enough to where it's like now there's enough of me that I can feel like the truth of who I am, and then the patterns. And those are two different things now.
Mhm. I love it. The grand sifting
Yeah.
between what is mine and what is theirs.
Yeah.
And who am I when I show up in the truth that my body is explaining to me and my mind is explaining to me? That to me is true sovereignty, because none of us are immune to programming.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you were not raised religious, that's how it shows up as stark and obvious in our life. The parenting can even be a little bit blurrier because it's just so familiar. And as we use these, our our program, our parenting, our culture, the country we live in, our religion, we use those as a backdrop to be witnessed by our true holy self. And then we can say, that's not mine. Because what is mine is sacred, it's kind, it's loving, it's curious, it's safe, it's expansive, it's beautiful. That's who I am. And that now begins the metric in which I can onboard more information. And now I'm the gatekeeper of the programs that I'm willing to run in my life.
That was so good.
I tell you what, stuff just comes flying through.
I could feel that in my body.
I know. I'm glad. I love to be unscripted because literally, and I've known this because I love to speak on stage because I can plan something, prepare it, and have my whole, program, all the things I want to say, and I just toss it, and I'm like, nope. I just get to be organic, and I get to speak it as it comes, and I feel grateful for that and terrified all at the
Mm,
same time.
yeah. Yeah. All those are welcome, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining. We're super excited for this to just continue to evolve
Yes.
and see what comes from this.
Yes. You all are sovereign and you have a gorgeous, beautiful body. Go connect with it and just see how amazing you are when you have it all on board.
Thank you for listening in. We hope there were takeaways that help you begin to unbind the deep programming that no longer serves you and remember more of who you truly are. If you'd like to connect more deeply, come join us on Facebook on our page called Unbinding. It's a space for real conversation, reflection, and community. And if this episode resonated, please share it with someone who might need it. Like, subscribe, and comment below. We'd love to hear what's moving for you. Until next time, take care of your heart and keep unbinding.